very often, like within healthcare, within human services, even in education, there's this emphasis on culture, cultural competence. And often when we talk about the profound problems around racism, people will try to get to that through cultural competence. Can you explain the difference or the partnering with cultural competence and anti-racist?
Well, over the years, before cultural competence became a buzzword, you had other words. You had sensitivity sessions. You had something called prejudice reduction. You had something called diversity. You had something called managing diversity. You had something called pluralism. All these are very important terms, but the key about it, and then you came up with cultural competence, which in the social service word, that's something very important. You got to be culturally competent. Well, that's good, but what happened, the only difficulty with that, and I think cultural competence and all these terms of diversity are very important, but they should be used in the right context. The difficulty is that people use these words or these terms to be interchangeable with the word they're dealing with racism, and they're not really dealing with racism at all. And it can be a misnomer because we've seen examples where in the corporation they use the word managing diversity. And we thought that was really good for the staff to do that. But once we checked the history of it, they had managing diversity because many of these corporations were dealing with being very racist to the various ethnic groups. But they did this so they wouldn't get sued. So they, so they felt as though if they get somebody to manage the diversity, then they would be let off from being sued. But all they did was to keep the staff very quiet, because corporations' primary goal, in a bureaucracy, is to keep their product going at any means necessary. It's not about how well the staff feel about it. So we knew that was a word, and so cultural competence stems from all of that, those different terms. So now that seemed to be more acceptable, more palatable. There are social workers, social justice organization, agencies use that right now, but they're still trying to not deal with the question of racism. And once they go through that whole process, eventually they're going to get to deal with racism. But people got to go through a process of fooling themselves in that sense. I think people got cultural competence. You should understand culture is very, very important because sometimes people don't respect each other's cultures. So we think to respect somebody's culture, is very important. But if you understand that you can be culturally competent and still have inequity. So you have to understand the two differences in those terms. So people might be culturally competent, which means they respect other cultural groups. But if that cultural group is not getting the equity and the respect, then it becomes a camouflage and it takes a long time. So we're not saying to begin to understand people's history and their culture. That's a good thing to do. But without understanding the dynamics of how racism creates inequity, that's why you got to do anti-racism work and undoing racism work. You're still going to get caught in a trick bag.